the community ultimately were the people who helped us survive in this time, right? Literally survive, right? And so I felt this strong need to get involved. I felt that I needed to help and I wanted to help. And if I was going to bring children into this world and into this community, then I had to be doing something.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Brownsville in Motion. Once again, we have delightful guests with information that we all need here in Brownsville. And I'm happy to welcome Daniela Lopez Valdez to join me today on the big white sofas to talk about what's going on in her world. My name is Rose Gowen. Again, welcome once again. Daniela, some people, although I doubt it, may not know you. Who are you? What do you want to tell us about yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy
Absolutely.
to be here, and thanks for everything that you've done for our community, and thanks for continuing to do amazing things for our amazing Brownsville community. I'm Daniela Lopez Valdez. I am the executive director of the Midi Cultural District, but I'm also the president of the Brownsville Independent School District. So, born and raised in Brownsville, Texas. Been here. I went to SMU in Dallas and lived there for 10 years. And then me and my husband, Hector, who is also from Brownsville, wanted to come back and give back to our community. So we decided we wanted to raise our kids back in Brownsville. So as soon as we came home, we got involved right away. So we've
So,
been
so
back.
that's a busy schedule. I mean, I have
Yes.
4 kids, so I know exactly what you mean. I went to high school with your dad, and I knew your parents know your parents very well. So, I feel like I'm talking to a friend, and very much so. So, all of that going on, a big move, small children, and everything. What led you to decide to run for elected office?
Well, it was I had just moved back. I moved back at the end of 2019 and we were building our house, and then
Okay,
2020 happened. And so we had to move in with my parents because our house wasn't built, and well, COVID happened,
sure.
right, in 2020. And so there was a lot going on, that were a lot of big changes in 2020, and I had a lot of pent up emotions on why are certain things happening, why are the community ultimately were the people who helped us survive in this time, right? Literally survive, right?
Yeah.
And so I felt this strong need to get involved. I felt that I needed to help and I wanted to help. And if I was going to bring children into this world and into this community, then I had to be doing something. And so there was a lot going on. I mean, there was distrust and information around doctors, people who have studied their whole lives around information, and also this isolation, right? And being able to really almost forget about the sense of community and your responsibility to the community. So I really felt that I needed to get involved. And my dad, who's been an elected official since I was born, pretty much, was like, you need to channel all of this. You have a lot of ideas, you have a lot of things that you want to do for the community, and you need to run for office. And so I did. And I thankfully was elected in 2020, a very tough year. And I didn't tell anybody, but I was pregnant with my first son. And I remember holding a sign, and I like literally was having morning sickness, but
Oh,
I
poor
couldn't tell
thing.
anybody because I just felt exactly that if I'm going to bring a child into this world, I need to be doing something to make the community better.
So
So
actually, your child ran with you
yes,
and
yes,
was elected with you. That's
exactly.
terrific. That
Just
is
like my dad.
wonderful.
So yes.
So 2020, sorry, 2020, you were elected, you get the chair. And what surprised you the most? I mean, as you sat in that chair for several months and now years, what has surprised you the most about having that office? Was there something you didn't expect?
I think because I grew up around it, I kind of knew a lot about what it is to be a public servant. But I think that what has been different now is the social media and,
Oh
you know,
gosh.
that whole I would say it is difficult to be at that level because anywhere you go, you are that public official. So you always have to be on, and you just never know who is gonna, take a picture or,
Hmm.
and I think that was something that was not part of public office before, and which me, all of that being said, is you have to have a thick skin, and I think that I knew that, but it was a lot more apparent because of the digital phase that we have, and people maybe not even knowing you, but then just believing what they see on a social media post. So I
Right.
think that was definitely unexpected, but I think the things that were happy surprises were the ability to learn and meet so many new people that I didn't know before. And because I'm in education, going into the classroom and seeing the power of education that I already knew was there, but actually seeing a student that I had talked to that went through a program that we had implemented and graduated and succeeded because of it, that was so much more rewarding than I even thought it could be. So I think the positive is what really I knew that it was there, but there it is so rewarding when you know that something that you did and that you worked hard for is now being students are benefiting from it.
I couldn't agree more. The first time I ran, there really was no social media. There were just two bloggers that really like to insult and criticize certain people in the community. And unfortunately, people read that blog just as entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
turn on the TV instead of a reality show, which didn't exist back then. It was that. And so when I first took office, it was really only those two lousy voices that to deal with. But then as time, so I got my feet under me, so to
Yes.
speak,
Yes.
because as a gynecologist, I mean, yes, you get criticized, but not like that.
Yes.
And generally, people are grateful for your service as opposed to not. But I've always been happy that I got my feet under me before the other that you describe happened because it is brutal. It's brutal and it's enough to deter so many good people from deciding to turn. I mean, none of us want to stay necessarily in office forever. We'd like to pass that baton to someone who is qualified and passionate and filled with integrity, and someone close like us, close to what we are. So, I think you're right on that. And in terms of fighting hard for something that you truly believe in, and then living that battle is so sometimes disorienting. But you're right. When it finally comes to fruition, it's a wonderful feeling that's hard to describe to someone that has not experienced that. So if you, I know that you obviously you're very passionate about education, and that of course impacts your work at the Midi Cultural District as well, educating the
Mm-hmm.
Children's Museum, the zoo, and all of those things. If you had to list the various pieces of education that we should all as a community be thinking about and keeping on our dashboard, what would they be?
I would say that people need to understand that education is part of the basic infrastructure of a community, and investing in resources that have to do with education ultimately improve our quality of life here. And I think when people look at education as an investment, they are more likely to understand that every dollar that you put into public education or any educational resource, $2 come out into the
Mhm.
economy. And so I know there's a lot of focus on economic development right now in our community, but for example, BISD in general has been the economic driver for a lot. We've had 7,000 jobs. We've provide healthcare for all of these people. We make sure we pretty much just help what comes at a at your kitchen table, right? We provide. If we raise the minimum wage, then everyone gets
Sure.
a raise. And so I feel like that's a huge component, is understanding that education is part of infrastructure. And other things that I would say is, when you are looking right now, because Brownsville's on the map, right, with these new companies that are coming, when their families are looking to invest, or whether a corporation or company is coming, education is something they always look at. They always look at infrastructure, but it's how are your schools rated well? Do we have facilities like the zoo and the children's museum for our families to enjoy? Do we have good parks? Do we have ultimately everything that art, right? That has to do with quality of life. And a lot of times they get overlooked and are not thought of as basic infrastructure. And I think we need to understand that it is, because if our future um, does well, then ultimately you the progress that comes from it is generational, right? That's how I always look at it, as education is the greatest equalizer, education is the biggest opportunity, and it is the biggest path to progress. So I think the mindset shift of education is part of infrastructure is huge, and as well as making sure that we continue to invest in source resources like educational experiences for families as a whole in Brownsville is what will ultimately not only make our community better, but also have people who want to come here have these opportunities as well. So.
I think about it as I love fabric art. I do a lot of quilting and sewing, and I think of it as a tapestry. And that tapestry isn't just made of one color or one kind of thread. There's education, there's traditional infrastructure, as in drainage and streets, there's economic development, and there is health and wellness. And all of those things make the tapestry the most beautiful and desirable tapestry there. And we should want that beautiful, desirable tapestry for our children, for our parents, for ourselves, and not just the one color blue tapestry or the one color green tapestry. And I think it's my theory anyway, that people fight to the death for economic development, but they forget that there are lots of different kinds of economic development, and it doesn't live in just one silo. And the same with health and wellness. It's what I'll say, what good is a job if you are not well enough to carry that job, to hold that job? About 70% of our people are uninsured. You employ 7,000, was it? Employees, all with full health benefits. That's huge. And so to integrate that tapestry, to weave it the best possible, we can't live in silos. We have to work together and see, okay, where can I help you? Where can you help me? And so forth. And keep all those things on the dashboard, not just the traditional items, because your tapestry is going to come out not beautiful,
Yes,
and not as useful and protective as it might be. And our kids deserve that. I really do. Whether it's private education or public education, they're both true and part of that tapestry. Having said all that, I think there's a BISD bond election coming up. Tell us about that.
of course. Well, I'm so glad that you said about the tapestry, because I think that's the whole point of community. On the whole thing about it takes a village to raise a child. I have two children. They're both 4 and 2. And I think of that exactly, the tapestry, right? And what it means and how it's so important to see it as quality of life as an investment, right? Making sure all the parts are working together. And so when you think about, the putting food on the table, health and wellness, providing insurance for community members, that's the basic part of what I think is we need to continue to grow, right? Like, for example, I know we talked earlier about potholes being the bane of your existence. And I think it's so funny because when you think about education, potholes, right? You can't stop fixing them. You can't stop working on I-35, right? Like,
sure.
And so that's what I think of is the ultimate reason is why we have to go with a bond, right? And why the bond is being proposed. And that's making sure that our schools are continuing to function and continuing to provide the best resources for our schools. So that being said, we have a proposal right now, and it's $385 million for basic infrastructure, which is roofs. We have some roofs leaking. We have HVACs that need to be replaced. We have schools that are over 100 years old, and our newest schools are close to 20 years old. So
wow.
It's time.
Yeah.
We got parking lots. We have some schools that are having basically the windows that were in place 100 years ago that need to be redone.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, this is basic infrastructure. I'm like, do you ask yourself, like, do you think a kid deserves to have a leaky roof? Well, No, like so I think that's what $385 million is capable of. And then that's Proposition A, and then Proposition B, which I'll go ahead and show here. This information is all on BISD.us. So if anyone wants more information on it, is Proposition B is 75 million for a performing arts center. And I think this is really amazing because the community really came together. Really, what it was the community who asked us to put this on the ballot, and so we have an amazing performing arts community, and I think that everyone really does kind of understand that here.
Yes.
And the students are so talented. So really, those are the two propositions. I look at it as basic infrastructure, and a lot of people wonder, like, why are you putting it on the ballot, right? And I think the education part of why it's there is because when you look at our pie and the budget, 65% of our budget from BISD comes from the state, 17% is the federal government, and the other 17% is local. And ultimately, there has been a huge shift, all politics aside, on whether people believe that education is infrastructure or not. And so when that has happened, we haven't received as much funding from the state that we usually have. And so this local bond is coming from our local revenues, which is the amount that we're able to invest in schools, which is like roofs, and that's called the interest in sinking budget. And that's really what we're trying to do, is just maintain the schools. And something in there that I should mention is the Career and Technology Center. I think it's imperative that our kids have that state of the art.
Absolutely.
And it was with the partnership with the city that we are able to ultimately come to an agreement to make sure that, the zoo is able to grow, but also that our kids are able to have a wonderful CTE center. So we got 16 million from the city, but it was the citizens committee that was put together of over 100 citizens that came together and proposed this to us, the school board, felt that we deserved and our kids deserved a state-of-the-art facility. So phase 2 will be included in the Proposition A. So
the new CTE is part of the proposition. That's
yes,
wonderful.
yes.
Tell it what kind of trend. So I've toured the old CTE before the sale. And so I thought things like beauty skills and firefighting and welding. This is career training, obviously
Yes.
CTE, for kids that perhaps may not be ready to go to college or not want to choose a college path. Is that what that
That's
is?
very true. And I think that when you think of the economic development in our community, we have to make sure, with compliance with the state, that what these career paths are something that is going to be beneficial for the community, or is something that the state is investing in or the city is investing in. So that's why these partnerships are so important. With, for example, we had this drone school that is now, I guess, here downtown, and it was a drone pilot school. And so we had a actual career path with Brownsville ISD and GBIC that came together to provide this different path, right? Like, no one think flying drones is a career path, but I mean, it's making sure that we fill the needs and make productive citizens of society. So whether it's plumbers, whether it's electricians, everybody always needs construction, right? That we provide those paths, and also that they are able to get good paying jobs, right? Plumbers make a lot of money these
They
days.
do. I
Yes.
just had a pipe that broke.
Yes,
They
yes.
do. Electricians as well. And
Exactly.
trades are important.
Yes.
In my generation, we called it a trade. I guess it's still a trade, but CTE is a nicer, fancier name for what's
Yes.
really, really needed. So when this money is allotted, the voters go to the polls. When is the election? November?
It's November 5th, and
Okay.
early voting starts October 20th.
So not
So,
really right around the corner.
yes.
So when the money is allotted, then is it required to use the funds for the things on the proposition? You can't decide. Can BISD decide? Oh, we're going to do this over here instead.
So absolutely it is, and we have always made sure to put it in writing, right? So basically, if you go to our website, every single school and what renovations are going to be done are listed, and there's pictures. And so you can actually say, hey, my kid goes to Lopez High School. I'm going to go and look at what renovations are going to be done, and you can follow that. And the best part of the way Dr. Chavez, our superintendent, set it up was he had the citizens bring the needs to the board. So it was over 100 citizens in the community. It was not only like teachers, administrators, it was bankers, it was we even had a commissioner on the committee. We had just parents, we had even a lot of people from different backgrounds that came together and proposed this to us. And so they were the ones who saw the needs, and they were the ones who pretty much came up with this plan. And so ultimately, yes, we are going to implement citizens committee part 2 to help with the implementation of the bond, so that, for example, they continue to follow up that these things are being done, and it'll be the citizens project, to make sure that these things continue to.
So on the website, which I find super cool that you list it by school, that's a lot of work just in and of itself, putting it on a website.
Yes.
Will they be able to follow the progress? Like if there were 100 windows needing replacement, but in 2 months there's 50 windows, will they be able to follow the progress?
So that's our goal. That is our goal, that the committee will help us follow that progress, and that we will be able to post those progressions for the community so they can see. And I think our communications department has done a good job at continuing to make that visible. So
that's cool. That's really neat. I think that I don't know that that's ever been done before in that way. That's terrific. So of the largest naysayers, because there's always going to be naysayers,
yes.
What would you say to them about the bond? What they don't believe you're going to use the money correctly, or it's going to be wasted, or what is it that folks are naysaying about?
Well, I think a lot of times people think of, for example, taxes, right? No one likes to talk about taxes. But the naysayers are saying, oh, this is going to be a huge tax increase. But in reality, it's not, because we've paid off our debt. We paid off our debt in a bonded debt. So what that meant was we paid it off early. So we brought, next year, the tax rate is going to go all the way to 4 cents, I believe. So we did that to prepare for this.
Okay.
So that the citizens and taxpayers wouldn't have a huge burden. It'll also be spread out over 5 years, and all the projects are based and listed on the website on what is going to be done each year, right? And embedded in that is also inflation. So that is, all of those parts were taken into consideration when coming up with this amount. And we have a little bar graph that's very, very easy to understand, but it took the average homeowner and what their average home costs, and what their price and what their bill would be, right, for BISD. And so ultimately, in 2025, what you're paying now currently will be less, a little bit less, or almost equal to what you will be paying in 2031 with the way we set up the bond. So basically, because of good planning and because of the homestead exemption and other things that were put into play, we, over the 5 years, it'll be spread out so that the citizens won't feel it, and it'll be ultimately an investment to make sure that our kids are in schools that don't have leaking roofs, and that are able to, kids that deserve air conditioning in their classroom, right? So it's like the basic needs. And of course, the high amazing thing would be the Performing Arts Center, which
so let's repeat that. Vote for this bond, which will provide a lot of infrastructure needs, and not just public school kids, but even private school kids sometimes use your facilities for games or events or conferences or whatever. And your taxes will stay the same. So let's say that again, your taxes will stay the same. So there's really not a good reason to vote no for these propositions, and the money is guaranteed to be used for the things that you read on the ballot. They cannot decide to, build something new or different or extraordinary, and you will know what that money is going to be used for. I think I'm
Absolutely.
repeating what you said, but I want to
Yes.
say it loudly.
Yes, yes. And you can actually see all of it online. I mean, literally, I don't know if y'all can see this, but we say year one, year two, year three, and what the projects are, what the schools are, and then of course this bar graph which shows the average homeowner price, and you can literally see what they're paying in 2025 and what they're going to pay in 2020 in 2031. It's weird saying 2031. But so we are as transparent as possible. And I think that has been one of the biggest points that we're trying to make sure that if you educate the community and you tell them really what it's for, I think that there's a lot of bipartisan support, and as well as communal support, because like the whole it takes a village. It really
Yes.
does, and this is the village that we need to continue making sure that our kids have good facilities. And um, I think going back to like local leadership and what's important, and when we think about those times when it was COVID, really it was the community that came together. It's the schools that provide refuge, that are centers for when there's a storm.
Mm-hmm.
The bus drivers who continue to deliver the warm meal to people, and kids who might not have that warm meal at home. So I think that when you put it that way, it's you
Well,
can't vote no. You have to vote yes.
you have to vote yes.
Yes.
I like to think of it, or I've always thought about, parks. Obviously parks and trails are a big aspect of my work, but for reasons of health and wellness. But I always think our people should not. There are some people that have not left Brownsville ever in their whole lives. And we should not have to leave Brownsville to go on vacation to experience a beautiful park or walk on a
Absolutely.
lovely trail. Those amenities, infrastructure should be available to our people as well, especially those who the local parks or trails are the only time that they're going to experience a vacation on the weekend. Education is part of that too. So in speaking about this bond, why shouldn't our children deserve the same infrastructure, as in other places? And I think the answer is they should. Our
Yes.
children are very deserving, very talented, and are the future of our whole community and future elected officials. And I think you
Yes.
would agree with me. So leading into next generation, that's a great
Yes.
segue. Um, we talked about growing a thick skin, what drew you to public office, the belief that you had ideas that were valuable to share. How do you go about growing future leaders when you are out there in the community talking to folks your age or maybe younger or maybe older? What's your advice? Because we all should be doing that.
Yes. I think it is back to the whole idea of if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're not involved with the policies and the future planning and growth of your community, right? That's why local leadership at its core is so important, because if we're passionate about, as parents, right? I'm passionate about making sure I have a good park for my kids to run around that's safe, and good experiences for them. But if I'm not at the table, then we're not there to voice our opinion. And so, I mean, not only just as somebody who's young and experiencing this all, as I literally live, but also making sure that as women we have representation, and some of the policies that I think are important, unless you're living them right now. Usually, elected officials, when they get elected, they either have a different perspective or they have they're a certain type of individual, right, who maybe has more time, or but if you consider it as part of your service, then you're more likely to have your concerns voiced in how the community grows in public policy. Like, for example, I don't know where we were, and me and my husband had to change a diaper of our baby, and we were like, "Hey, there's no changing table here." And I know that's like the basic, that's so
Yes,
basic, but
yes.
I was like, "Okay, we need to make sure that all these public places have
Have a
a changing
changing table.
table," right? Like, I mean, I think any mom or any dad can agree with me that that is like the most basic thing of why your voice matters. And so when we're inspiring the new generation, there's a lot of amazing leadership academies, and I just see that, whether it be student council or bringing our, specifically at BISD, our superintendent meets with the student council and talks about the leadership. I was in Leadership Brownsville. If
Hmm.
anybody hasn't is interested, I recommend joining that organization because it really shows you all the amazing assets that we have to offer and why leadership, good leadership and integrity and people who have vision and goals and representation of what our community really is, like the tapestry that you talked about. That's how we bring our ideas to the table, and making sure that it is tough, right? Having that thick skin, unfortunately, is something that we have to live with, but also think about it. Am I being part of the problem or I'm being part of the solution? And so I was always raised to be part of the solution. If I was having a hard time, my dad or my mom would always say, well, what are you going to do about it? And so I think that that's why I ran, and I encourage others and young people, if you're very passionate about something, then get involved, learn about the process. And instead of typing away on your keyboard and saying something upset, something negative, get up and get working and get involved. Um, and if you're on the other side of the keyboard, I would say make it, be kind, right? Like treat others like you would like to be treated. And I think that we all have to do that together. I
I
think that's,
agree. It takes courage to stand up and say, okay, I'm going to put my name on this ballot.
yes.
So let's respect that courage.
Yes.
Someone told me once, there was a saying, the only person not helping is the person not rowing the boat. And
Absolutely.
and so if you want to help, pick up an oar and help us row the boat. That means voting.
Yes.
Even if you don't choose to run for office, it means voting. And we live in an area with very low voter turnout, unfortunately. So, pick up an oar and vote. That's the very basic thing. Know who you're voting for. That's another very basic. And these days, not hard to figure out. You can go to that particular candidate's website and read about them and so forth, and choose to possibly serve. You don't have to be in elected office forever, but serve, do a few years and see how you can make that difference. And if it's not for you, it's not for you, but at least you picked up an oar
Yes.
and tried for that time that you will. So we spent a lot of time today talking about BISD, which is very important. My dad was a teacher at BISD for many years, but you have that other job of the Midi Cultural District. Tell us a little bit about that. What do you do there? What is the Midi Cultural District?
Of course. So basically, I'm so excited to have this job because it really is the core of quality of life, right? That's how I see it, as the unique experiences that we have in Brownsville, and it's pretty much the cultural district is once you exit 6th Street, everything south of that. So you see those Midi arches right when you exit 6th Street. It's the zoo, it's the Children's Museum, it's now the Midi, the Arts and Cultural Center, Linear Park,
Mm-hmm.
all the amazing murals that we have, the businesses, all on the historic part of downtown. And what we do is market the experience as a whole and provide educational and creative and cultural experiences and preserve that for the community. And so we have had a lot of wonderful projects. This is, I think, my fourth year being at the cultural district, and the idea is, there's a lot of amazing nonprofits that operate separately, but not with the cultural district. We market it together and we bring
Sure.
everyone together because together we're stronger,
Of
right?
course.
And these experiences are anything from the farmers market, which, going back to that village, I think of Luca and how he loves to go get the muffin at your stand at the Brownsville farmers market, and to walking over to the zoo after that, or walking over to a restaurant that is locally owned by
Mhm.
people who were born and raised here, and making sure we have that entire experience. Or whether it's date night, right? Like whether you're wanting that experience of going to a lunada and then heading on to one of the downtown restaurants. That is all quality of life. And of course, the art, right? We have amazing artists. And if you've taken a look at those murals, we're doing this it's called Murals in the Midi, and ultimately it is a 24/7 gallery, and it's app activated. So all you have to do is download the app, and it'll be launching soon. But what we're doing is we, with partnership with Brownsville Pedicab, Cynthia Lazardi
Mhm.
Burlett, we now have 20 murals that are documented. And this is not only to preserve the art and the 24/7 ability of knowing why each artist made this mural, what was behind it, but also promoting the walkability, which is all in turn leads to health, experiences. If people walk more, they're more likely to be healthier, but also taking cars off the road, right? So,
Sure.
and it's all narrated by W.F. Strong, who's one of our very own. He's on NPR, and it's this idea of creating these cultural experiences that enhance our community. So it's a lot of fun. There's so many projects coming on, but it's the idea of building this coalition that is the cultural district with private and public entities, and creating that magical experience that is Brownsville.
I grew up. When I was growing up, there were still the railroad tracks, and so there was no linear park. We did have Dean Porter Park, or we called it Ringgold Park back then, and the zoo was just new. No child. I don't remember a children's museum. I don't really remember the Camille, but I could be wrong on that. But to see how it's grown, and now it's a destination for so many reasons. I think about my kids in the late 90s when we moved home. My oldest was 10 and my second son was 5, and my baby was my baby. And so looking for summer activities for them, I didn't even have to get out of the Midi Cultural District. They did the zoo program, and then they went over and did the children's museum program. And it really is such a rich area that's beautiful on top of all of that. It's nice to hear about the murals, and I can't wait to see that app.
Yeah.
And we hope that it continues to grow and thrive. I can't wait till the cannery
Oh,
opens.
yes.
We are all so grateful that the Middies decided to grace us with their presence and their vision. So we look forward to more. When is the building going to come back online?
So we're hoping by next year. We've been working with UTRGV, and there's some exciting exhibits coming. And this whole partnership is really to make it the cultural center of the community, making sure that people have all this space. So we're gonna have those exhibits that coming in January. I was talking to some people earlier. There's potentially more coming this December.
Terrific.
So we're excited, and it is open for the community, right? And right now we're there. There's some construction going on that we have to bring the building up to par, but we are, even if we are doing construction, parts of it will still be open. So we don't plan to like fully close. We want to continue to have it to be an operational building, and so hopefully within the next 18 months it'll officially all be done.
And it'll be called the Midi, or is that the name of
The
the?
Midi Arts and Cultural Center.
Very cool.
Yes.
Very
Mhm.
cool. So we've really run the gamut. It's talked about education, infrastructure, arts, placemaking, and people destinations for really building that community that we all want to live in with the most rich tapestry we can possibly imagine. And I thank you for your service, and it really takes people like you to help us weave that tapestry. And well done. My hat's off to you. And you're not done yet, so you can't leave yet.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you.
what did we as we leave? What did I miss or forget to ask you? Anything you'd like to say?
Honestly, I think you touched on everything. I think that I want to thank you for doing this and bringing awareness to all of your years of service and what you've done, and making it on, on the record, right? And I think that um, I'm so grateful to have had leaders like you who've come before me, like my father, like my mom, who really understood the ability of service, right? And I think right now we're going up in a very individualistic
Yes.
culture, with social media. It's great, right? And it's amazing and it's a great way to connect. But I feel that when we look up from our phones and we actually have this conversation that we're having now is when the real magic happens, is when we're actually able to make change and make progress. And so I just want to encourage everyone, to get up and explore our wonderful community, get involved, give back. It's important, and I think that we need to understand that we're all in this together.
That's
We're,
right.
we're all in this together, and it takes people to step up and run for office, and for us to cheer them on if they're going to do it, right? So um, that's my message to the community: is get involved, continue to explore, and be a part of all these amazing things that we have going on in our community.
That's terrific. Well said. So start with voting November the 5th, early voting October.
Early voting October 20th. Actually, October 6th is the last day to register to vote.
Okay.
October 20th through the 31st is early voting, and November 4th,
November 4th.
November 4th is election day. So please go out and vote for the bond. It's important. The kids are our future, and if we invest in them, we will have a very hopeful economy.
And it will not raise your taxes. It will not raise your taxes. And visit the Midi Cultural District if you haven't already. You must be, living in a dead zone or something, because the Midi Cultural District is unmistakably a beautiful gem part of the city. So visit it. Check it out. Go to the farmers market, go to the zoo, children's museum, and stay tuned for the cannery coming up. It is definitely the heart and soul, and definitely going to continue being the heart and soul of the community. So thank you very much, Daniela, for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you.
And you guys stay tuned. We have more great stuff coming up.